and then we'll come back to you. You can tell us a little bit more about the process, because I want to completely geek out with you guys, if that's okay. So please just introduce yourself and share the project that you have in the festival now.
Okay, I can start.
Oh, okay.
Nice to meet you all. I'm sorry for being late in a minute. My name is Nili Tzruya. I'm from Israel, Tel Aviv, and my project is called One Woman, and it's a web series exposing true stories of women who are revealing their sexual lives, their journey through their lives, and it's been on air almost 2 years, and it's got lots of prizes. It won the Israeli Academy Award, and also in Melbourne Web Fest they won the Impact Award and the Directors Award from New Zealand Web Fest. And these days I'm trying to do actually two things with this project. I forgot to mention a very important thing, that each episode was made up with a different female crew. It was all just from a female perspective. So the director, the photographer, the editor, they were all female. And these days I'm actually dreaming of having this kind of format being done in other countries and cultures. So there will be one woman from Japan and one woman from France and so on. Plus, I'm also developing it to a TV format. So I guess I forgot many things to say, because once I don't practice my English, I kind of forget the words I'm supposed to use. But maybe I'll remember some more, and I'll talk later as well.
Thank you, and welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thanks.
Who would like to go next?
Go next. Hatwala Ditnak, Michelle Hernandez. Hi, my name is Michelle Hernandez. I am a WIAT filmmaker. Originally, I grew up in Northern California, where my tribe's from, and I currently reside in Tongva Land in Los Angeles. I am the director and writer and one of the producers for Duke, which focuses on a young girl in the early 1900s with the possibility of going to the boarding school.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Okay, guys, Sarah.
Yeah, my name is Sarah. I use they, them pronouns, and I know that's not necessary, or you didn't ask that, but I do feel it's important because my film follows a Black queer artist and organizer in Chicago, and we basically follow them as they create a piece of art that answers the question, how do you reimagine your reality? So we follow this person through creating a piece of artwork and also doing a project that really thinks about how they love and how they're in love with their wife. So yeah, that's my project. And thank you so much for having me.
Great, thank you. Who would like to go next? Catherine, how about you jump in? Tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm a writer-director from Los Angeles. My film is called A Cure for All Things, and it's about a Taiwanese American woman who finds a mysterious vial amongst her late mother's things that ends up transforming her into their ancestors and descendants. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you here. Gail, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Gail. I'm from San Diego, California, but I'm currently studying in Los Angeles. I was the writer, director, and producer of the animated short film Guardians. It's about a young child facing their fear of the dark. And I worked on this project with a team of women and non-binary animators. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to be here. And last but not least, Tracy. And also like we'll come back around because I'd love to have you guys talk about where you're at too. So
Right. Hi, I'm Tracy Mathewson. I'm the writer-director of California. I'm from California. I'm currently living in London, and the story is about a young woman who moved from England to California and is trying to make it. And she kind of has this conflict with her dad that she has to revisit in order to contact him after being silent for 6 months with him. So yeah, that's my story.
great. I mean, what a diverse group of amazing women filmmakers. I mean, not only the content and storyline wise, you guys, I had a honor to watch all your films. And so I was over the weekend just really excited in between watching football too. I love football. So it was like a really nice mix. I would love just to like have a roundtable conversation with you guys, and just in terms of what your process is like. Are you a first-time filmmaker? Is it something that you've been doing for a while? And any advice that you would give any future women filmmakers out there of just like how to get started. And yeah, so if we can kind of go back to our first filmmaker, and I believe you're in Israel. Are you in Israel right now? Yeah,
Yes.
tell us a little bit how what your process is like, and then any advice that you would give to any future filmmakers out there.
So, okay, first, I didn't say what was my role. I am the creator of the series and the actress and producer. So I had different female directors to each episode, in which I portray in each episode a different woman revealing her sexual journey. And it's all based on true on interviews I've made with women who wish to remain anonymous.
Okay.
And so the process for me was actually to meet tons of women, which at the beginning I thought would be very, very hard to find women who will be, willing to talk so honestly and openly with me. And I found that it was much easier to do it with strangers than with my friends or family. There is something, I don't know, actually I do know now from a perspective, but at the beginning it felt like a big obstacle to go through. And after I had so many interviews of like 3-4 hours each, what I did is I've tried to make a monologue of 5 minutes, kind of take the highlights or the main story that I want to put the spotlight on. And then I had to gather and to have a female crew that will come with me and to find the locations and everything, to make it a kind of a short, very, very short feature film. It looks like it's a docu-film. It's not, it doesn't look like it's a narrative one. It's called a mockumentary web series. Excuse me for the And I think it was very challenging because I had no budget and I had to produce it all by myself. So obviously it was very challenging, but I was very thrilled to find so many women wanting to do things with this subject, and they volunteered their time and effort, and it was very exciting to go through it. It took me 3 years to finish the project from the beginning. But I think it's the best thing I've done to myself for myself throughout my career. And it definitely made me want to do much more right now. So
do you have any advice? What advice would you give someone who hasn't done this before?
I think the main advice that I keep telling myself now that I'm trying to do some new things is just keep on going. Just don't stop the cycle, even if it's hard and you don't know, and you got so many refuses and it doesn't seem to flow. Just keep on moving and things will happen. You don't know where it will come from. Just keep doing. That's the main thing that works for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have everybody here. Who wants to go next? Michelle, would you be game to jump in? Tell us a little bit about your process and, what advice would you give to someone,
So a little about my process. I'm a very visual type of person where I can see things. So with Duke, I didn't want to write the script. Apparently, my producers and my partner were saying, yeah, that's not how this works, even though I knew that's not how it works. So they sat me down for a week and I wrote it. And it was a really hard process to write Duke just because it's a subject that I'm close to. My great grandmother was one of the children who went to a boarding school. And so it was just a lot of the characters are loosely based on her and then an elder that I knew. So it was a hard process. But we got it done. And then the other struggle with this project was funding. We did have a budget, but we didn't have the money. I call it my little miracle project because our community ended up giving us everything. And it was like a $20,000 budget and we only raised $6,000. But the community stepped up and did taco feeds for us, bought our plane tickets. So again, like I tell people, it doesn't hurt to ask your community because they really want to support you. And the one advice that I give a lot of people is just start making stuff. Like it doesn't matter if it's not good. We all start somewhere and then you just got to keep going. It's a process of practicing and you'll improve. So yeah, pick up a camera. If you're a writer, write something, write every day. And then get your friends together and make it. Again, it might not be the best thing, but at least you created something and they can move forward.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's great advice. Just keep going forward. Create. Catherine, would you share with us your process and, what other advice that you give someone that is just starting out?
For this project, I was in a fellowship program. And so we had a little bit of a budget and I knew it was like, I've only really done no budget sort of passion projects before. And so I really wanted to take this opportunity to do something ambitious. And so I had this idea, this sort of magical realist idea and with a lot of like ambitious VFX. And so part of the process then became about writing the script to make it work. Like, not writing the script in ways where I, as the director, knew we could make that happen practically or just with very minimal VFX. And yeah, we shot it in a weekend, really small crew, and then went into post, and part of post was done during the pandemic. And so that was really interesting to transition into a totally virtual process. As far as advice, I would say that your process doesn't have to look like you can do your process the way that you want. It doesn't have to look like the way that you think a filmmaker should do it. And like personally for me, I had to sort of slowly unlearn a lot of those things that you think a director should do. Like they need to be firm all the time. They need to know exactly what they want, when actually for me, I like to sort of bring other people in and make it really collaborative because I can learn from them, and that it's okay to let your crew know that sometimes you don't know something and you are open to other opinions. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's such great advice, just in general, that participatory and collaborative space that create, and then you hold that space right during the process. So that way all this magic happens and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's it. You couldn't have like produced or directed it. You're like, that's amazing. I just have a quick follow-up question, Catherine. What was that like for you to kind of, I don't want to say tailor, but to kind of rearrange the writing piece to fit the production piece? Did you feel that you compromised anything in that process with the creative writing component so you can implement it during filming process?
Yeah, I think it came really naturally.
Okay.
I was inspired a little bit by some directors like Michel Gondry, who really makes it work. And like the script, all I knew sort of at the center was that this vial of some elixir would turn people into their ancestors and their descendants. It went through several iterations of what that would look like and how the ancestors would appear. Would they be outside of that person's body or inside that person's body? And so at every iteration, it was like, well, as I was writing it, I would visualize sort of how we would pull that off. That was really most of what it was.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sarah, what you got for us? What was it like for you? And what advice would you give someone that's just, kind of getting started and getting their feet wet?
Yeah. So the process was really long. And so I think my advice would be like, it's okay if it takes a long time, because the product is going to be that much better the more time and patience you give into the process. So yeah, it was a very long process. Like, she got married while we were filming, and then we had to like her wife became like the center of her life, and so we had to make the center of the story about her, about her wife, or about her love for her wife. So yeah, I think it's okay that it takes time, and I feel like it's a saying, but it's a saying on purpose that it takes patience in the process. They should have patience in the process. So yeah, that would be my advice.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, we think about patience. I mean, it's either you surrender yourself to this moment or you will be battling it. And I think, when you have that word, what's it called? Patience? Oh yeah, that's right. And it doesn't happen on your timeline. I saw everybody shaking their head. Yep. As you were saying this, because I think we all have like a vision and an end goal, right? But I think if you let go of that and kind of let it be, that's where all the magic happens. And then if you could give anybody advice on the street or someone watching this live, what would that advice be besides patience? Do you have anything else to put in there?
I just feel like you should be having fun. I feel like we should be having fun when we create, I think that's one of the most beautiful parts about creating things, is that you get to have fun along with it. So my advice for just anyone walking on the street, just like try to have fun.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Gail, what was your process like? I mean, your piece was definitely unique in terms of like everything else that was in the festival, the animation piece, which I think is amazing. I've never done anything like that. So
yeah, so Guardians was my first official film. It was a student film for our sophomore year of animation. So we had no budget, just students working on it. And I was the creative director, which means it was my idea. I pitched it. And we worked on it completely during COVID. So we were never in physical proximity with each other. None of the people working on the film. It's a 2D animated film. And it's a very time-consuming process that I think is difficult for people who don't have a direct experience with animation to understand. Like our film it's just under 3 minutes, and it's over 4,000 frames.
wow.
4,000 drawings. We did it with 5 people.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a big effort, and I'm very proud of my team. I was really lucky. I worked with some amazing artists. And yeah, the advice that I would give anyone starting out is to just shoot your shot. Like, the only opportunities you're guaranteed to miss are the ones that you don't try to take. So just ask for things, ask for help. And also be open to communicating and collaborating, because filmmaking is almost never a solo process. You're always going to have to collaborate with people. You're always going to have to talk to people. And so I would say, like, just be willing to embrace what your fellow artists are willing to bring to the table.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Wow. So Tracy, so tell us a little bit about your process and then any kind of advice that you have for someone who's just getting started for the first time.
Yeah. So I guess normally I would spend more time writing my previous shorts. California was the third narrative short that I've either kind of co-written but directed. This one really just kind of tumbled out of me. There was a seed of an idea many, many years ago, and it wasn't kind of until life caught up with that inspiration that it was kind of ready. And once it was ready, it just kind of came right out. So it was written in like less than a month in maybe September of 2019, and I wanted to shoot it like in January when it was quiet. And then we lost our original DOP, lost our original cast, supporting cast. And then that was in January. And then we were meant to shoot in the March of 2020, which was lockdown. And it was the week that lockdown happened here in the UK. And we didn't even, like, the whole film industry like stopped for a bit. And we didn't even know if it was ever going to happen. So everything kind of parked for a bit. And then we then lost the location that we were meant to do. And then, then I ended up moving house, and we ended up being able to shoot it in the flat that I was living in, which actually really kind of opened up the story. I had to adapt the screenplay to that location, got a new DOP, recast it, shot it magically in July, kind of when things are a bit more relaxed. And then like Catherine, I think all the post was done remotely, which was really different than what we'd ever kind of done before. But yeah, I managed to finish it. So that was the process. And I would say advice, everybody's given really, really good advice, which I also would give, but I would say share your work. This was like a really personal project for me, and always the scariest bit was showing it to people. And so to kind of get over that, I would say just share it as soon as you can and get feedback from people that you trust, people whose opinions you value, because it's only going to make your work better if you release it rather than being really protective of it.
Oh, thank you. That's great advice. And we talk about, how that happens sometimes in the process where you have everything lined up and then you're like, oh, I guess none of that's going to work out. So we got to start all over again. And then somehow that synergy works out where you're like, yep, here's the great cast. Yep, this is the person. Here's the location now. That's great. It sounds like you really had to pivot. And I think that's awesome that it turned out the way that you wanted it to turn out. So thank you for sharing that. We have a question in the chat, and the question is for Michelle. And the question is, how did your community respond to the film?
Yeah, so my community is really appreciative of the film because it is a topic. Now in recent news, things are coming out where people are learning about boarding schools and these things that have happened to unfortunately, our youth. And some of them didn't end up coming home. And so that's kind of what's been circulating. But for my community, they're appreciative because it's a history that only us, mostly in our communities, know. We've been told growing up, and it's kind of the reason why I don't like to say our traditions are lost. I feel like that's claiming that something's gone. I like to say our traditions are asleep, and luckily our tribe has awakened our traditions, which is really amazing because there's a generation who will never know that they weren't there for a while. But yeah, so I think it's really important, and they thought it was really important to tell the story so that other people would learn. Again, the law school in the United States closed in 1970, and I believe in Canada it was 1990. So it's not that long ago. It's just something that, we don't talk about in schools. Also, the United States doesn't admit that they did this because they have to admit that they took all these children by force. It was a law. It wasn't a choice. And so, again, I know I went on a tangent. They're appreciated that this is coming out and that people are learning and that it's starting conversation, because that was the whole point of the film, is to let people start talking about it and becoming allies for us, because we know what we need to do as a community to heal, but we need the support to get our foot in certain places that we can't as a Native community.
Wow. I mean, it's again, like just being in this room with you guys, so many different pieces, but they're all so important because it all comes from like a place within when you create something that you guys have created. If there was something, I love to just go around the room too. And like, if you guys have questions for each other, I love that too. I mean, just, you know, let me know and unmute yourself and ask questions to each other too. The other question I had for you guys, I mean, if there was something that you could do differently about this particular piece that you have in the Imagine This Women's International Film Festival, what would you have done differently and why? Anybody can jump in. We don't have to, you can answer it or not answer it, but I'm just always curious, like that question always kind of spurs more thought around the process itself.
I think what Tracy said was something that I really feel that I went through as well. I think the main thing that I don't know where to buy this button, but if it was possible to just stop being feared so much and not to be so unsecure of what we're doing, and if we're talented enough, if we're good enough, if people will connect to what we're doing. I read a few articles that this in confidence is something that women are dealing with much strongly than men. And there are tons of reasons for that. But I wish that was something we could overcome in a certain way.
Yeah, does anybody, oh, sorry.
Oh.
Please.
Sorry, if you wanted to add.
Yeah, no, please, no, jump in. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, I guess the one thing that I would do differently for Guardians is, like, if I had the opportunity to just remake it, is we were on a tight semester deadline. We had to finish in 16 weeks. So I suppose if I had more time, there were just things that I would go back and fix or maybe spend more time refining. But I also think that that's always true of creative projects. And at a certain point, you have to just let things go. So.
Healthy deadlines are good. I've learned that the hard way, in a good way. Yeah. Anybody else? What would you do differently if you could for this particular piece?
I think I'm with Gail, actually. I feel like we had to compromise so much in the lead up to the shoot that once it was done, I feel like I really had to work on accepting it. Normally I get to projects and I'm like, oh, I would have done that. We had to lose this out, and you kind of think about what you've missed or what you would have changed. But this is one project where I've tried so hard to just be accepting of it and actually like really not go there. Because otherwise I think sometimes you can regret something that you've put so much into, or you look at it with a bit of like disdain. And I think zone that we've kind of passed, and then just kind of like progressing past it is kind of more important to me. So yeah.
I think sometimes we can be our own worst, not enemy, but our own worst critic, or we can be so critical of our own elements sometimes. And then when you shoot something and then edit it later, 9 months later, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I was part of that. That's amazing. But at that moment in time, I was like, this is not good. So I think, we can do that more so maybe in our own space, because we want to always just do the best we can and honor that process itself. And you guys have like cast members in writing. I do documentary work, so I have so much respect for you guys, and I will love this is something that I don't know much about. And I would love, we have another question here, but then I want to go back to casting too at some point with you guys, because I would love to learn about what that process was like. But it says here for Sarah, another question in the chat: how did your subjects respond to the film, Sarah?
Yeah, I think they loved being like featured. I feel like because they're just my friends, and I was so glad that they thought it was a caring portrayal of them. You know, I think it's the goal was that it was a really love-filled story. And so I think that they appreciate that their lives were like captured in a loving way, hopefully. Yeah, but I think, yeah, they're kind of just like, whoa, we're in a film, you know, like, because they're just my friends. Not just my friends, they're my friends. And so I think they're just excited that they get to be in something that kind of tells a story.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes those are the best stories, or the ones that in your backyard, or the people that are right next to you. I think that humanizes that whole experience of why we're creators and what we do and why we do this. I'm kind of multitasking here. I'm looking at the chat too, just to make sure I got everybody's questions covered. So again, I would love to go back to casting, because I think that is such an important part of this whole process too. And like, what's something that you guys, what's your guys' process when it comes to casting? And any kind of, again, advice that you give someone that is just getting started, and like how you even start casting?
I can go. So for my film, I had a very specific casting. I wanted all Native people. There's a history within Hollywood where they don't cast Native people in these Native roles, or they sometimes find Native heritage in the characters after they casted them. And so I wanted to make it a career, or my job to change that. And so I also wanted him to look, like I said, I'm Wiyot. We shot in Yurok territory, and the Yuroks are our neighbors. So we have this very like different look than a typical stereotypical Native character on Hollywood. So I was like, I want to portray that. We're also very different than the Plains Indians you often see in film. So there's a whole process. I went on, I think, Instagram and looked up Native actors, and I was like, oh, I guess you can be Wiyot, or you can be Yurok. And then I went on IMDb and got the free service to get agents' numbers, which is very helpful if you're looking. And then reached out to an agent for the mother. And then I remembered the father I had seen in like some sci-fi show. And I was like, oh, he could totally be Yurok or Wiyot. And that stuck along because I watched the show a long time ago. And again, I reached out to his agent. And so they all said yes. And then the trickiest part was casting the sisters. We posted on like youth, I guess, acting sites, and a lot of people who weren't Native were like, I'm interested in this role. And it was really hard to ask them like straight up, are you Native? Like, I'm asking for you to be Native, like Native heritage or of a tribe. And they're like, no, but I can pass this. I'm like, that's unfortunate, that's not what I'm asking. And then I think what happened, we had an emergency meeting with one of my producers, and we went up north where we shot it. And we actually went to my sister's 8th grade graduation, and she saw this little kid bobbing around, and she's like, oh my gosh, she's so cute. Like, do you think about casting her for the film? And I was like, oh, my cousin? No. I was like, I guess I'll ask my uncle. So we asked her, which she actually was the first person we casted, was my cousin. And we went to her school, we talked about the subject so she understood what was going on. And I think a lot of people feel like children don't understand stuff, but they do. She understood right from the start. And then I also had heard she'd run around school saying she was going to be a movie star. And I was like, oh gosh. And anyways, long story short, we casted her as a role. And then the last person that we had to cast was the lead. And unfortunately, it was really hard. And I was like, I guess I'll switch it to it being the little girl. It'll just be one character. And it was another situation where I was not wanting to be productive and went on Facebook. And one of my producers saw my sister, whose 8th grade graduation we had gone to, and she's like, oh, she would be perfect for this role. I'm like, that's my sister. I don't know. No, I don't think so. And she's like, well, Michelle, we have no other like plans. So we're going to go into production in a month, and the lead's not casted. And so then I was like, I guess I'll call her. I called her. She was in gym class. She's like, what do you want? And I was like, hey, you want to be in my movie? She's like, no. So then I called my mom to convince her. Long story short, she ended up playing the role as well. So they were both Wiyot and Yurok, or my cousin's Yurok and Hoopa. But it was really cool to actually have the main leads be from my tribe.
Wow. I mean, it's the story behind the story, right? I mean, that's amazing. But I love how creative you are. Like, just contact agents, you just never know. Or Facebook or Instagram. I love that because that way you can almost get a feel for that person too. Oh, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing. We do have one other question in the chat with Nellie. Are you thinking of expanding on one woman, creating more on the concept? That's the
Well,
question.
yes, I'm actually looking for female creators around the world who would love to do this format and make and go through this process of interviewing women, and then if it's an actress creator, then she could just do as I did and portray in each episode different women. And I'd love to have this, big manifest of women from all over the world, exposing our most intimate story, which is never being told from our perspective. It's always in a male perspective, and so in a certain way, when you watch TVs and film, all sex scenes are mostly what men wish to have and not necessarily female, and this affects us and affects our approach to our own sexuality. And this is something I would like to change by this web series. So the answer is definitely yes, but I don't want to do more episodes on my own. I wish it would be something that more women will, do it. And what I'm trying to do on my own right now is expanding this format into a TV one. And also there, it will be quite similar, having women with testimonials based on true stories, all made with a female perspective. And this could also be an international project. So hopefully one of them, or, both. But yes.
Yeah, I mean, because you mentioned earlier the writing, the mockumentary, right? Because your character talks to the camera, which
she talks to an interviewer that we don't see.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of creates this more intimacy piece between the viewer and
the character,
who she is at that moment in time, right? Because it's over different stages happen with the storyline. But do you think that approach would make it more accessible in terms of internationally with what you're talking about, this new format that you want to do?
Are you asking about the web series?
Yeah.
Or the TV?
Yeah, I think if you just talked a little bit about the format that you're referencing, like what does that format look like for your web series?
So it's like the little Bible that I have for this web series, which means like step by step how to make it, how to do it, how to keep it authentic as possible and loyal to the interviewer, and how to make it diverse, and how to reach those women, interesting different stories. Maybe I should tell a bit about the episodes that I chose, the stories that I chose from all those interviews that I made. One is about a woman who is having sex with her husband every day for 30 years that they've been married. And at the beginning, it sounds so happy, wow, perfect. But then through the interview, I got to realize a very sad story that and traumatic story that she went through with her father, that she made some kind of psychological link between keeping a man and sex. And so I think that you can find, I found myself in each woman that I portrayed in a certain way, not because it's my own story, but because I understand her so well. Why I understand her needs and her choices, And that is the thing that I really wished will happen when other women and male watch the web series. And well, I'm jumping into other subjects, but I will be back to what you've asked me, because I wanted to mention that I think that the only powerful thing that we have in a web series is that you can know your audience, and you know how much they've been watching, who have been what is their age, you know, if their gender and where they come from. And I was so surprised to see that I was sure that only women around 40-ish will be interested in my web series, and then it wasn't like that at all. Eventually, young to very old women watched it, but mostly men watched the web series, and not necessarily, you don't see anything intimate then. I guess you didn't see it, so it's only a woman talking. You don't see anything, any nudity, and it's not grotesque in any way. And I was very proud that so many men saw it. I think maybe it's more impactful in a way. This, but what remind me what?
I mean, yeah, you just never know, because I think that when you create something, you're getting inspired from all the different things around you, and then to present it, and then to see the engagement piece and who engages with it and why, that just brings back more of that inspiration to you, right? To keep creating, keep creating.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that with us. We have just a few more minutes left, and I'd love just see if anybody has any final comments or thoughts to share, and then we'll wrap it up. So.
Yeah, well, I can't exactly talk about casting the same way that other filmmakers here are, because of the nature of our short being animated. But I will say that for us, the character design is very important, and it's very essential as artists for us to consider all the coding that would go into the appearance of our characters. And so for this short in particular, we very much wanted to have a character of color, because there's some very unfortunate trends or patterns in this type of story, where children of color are seen as less innocent in a way, and so that the role of the main character in our short would typically end up being filled by a white character. And so we just wanted to be very aware of breaking from that trend, and creating a character who is a person of color. And that's just something that I think there needs to be more focus on in animation, is all of those subtextual elements that go into creating a character.
I can also,
oh, great. Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi,
No worries. Similarly to Michelle, it was really important for me in terms of, I'm Taiwanese American, and when it came to casting people for this short, it was very important for me to reflect the linguistic complexities of our experience. You know, you have people who speak Mandarin, you have people who speak Taiwanese, and then a bunch of other languages as well in Taiwan. And generationally that changes depending on what kind of environment that character would have grown up in. And so, especially when it came to casting the grandmother, it was important for me to find somebody who could speak Taiwanese, and that's a little bit difficult to find here in LA. And eventually I ended up just casting my mother, because, you know, she speaks it, she has that feeling of home and warmth. And it was like a sort of balance in terms of I think I can direct her and she can, it's do you want the language, or do you want a professional actress, and can you mold somebody who doesn't normally act? And I think that really lends a sense of authenticity to our short in the end. And it was really important to me, because you don't often see that even in films that are made for or about the experience.
Okay, so I have one quick follow-up question for Catherine. I know we got to end this soon, but what was that like for you? I mean, to have your mom be part of that process?
It was great because she got to see me at work. Like, that's one thing, right? Is like your parents don't really always know what you do. And so she got to see me at work and like all these people listening to me and how the mechanics of the set really function. Yeah, it was also really fun just to have her around.
That's amazing. Oh, I love that. So I'm looking for, I think anybody else have anything they would like to share as well with casting or kind of wrap this up? We do have like, I think 2 or 3 more minutes left here. Or also, wait, sorry. I got a message says, where can we find you? I guess more of like, if you could just tell us again, your website or, you know, how people can get in touch with you, that would be great too. So thank you, Patrice, for mentioning that. So how can we find you guys?
Well, I'm easy to find. I'm on YouTube, and my web series is called One Woman. In Hebrew, it's called Isha Achat. And so I guess it's kind of easy to find it on YouTube.
I would say the easiest way to stay in touch with me would be just to go to my website. It's tracym.com, TRACYM.com, and it links to all my socials. So head there and then stay in touch. And yeah, I'd love to stay in touch. I've written all your names down, ladies. So I'm going to follow you guys.
Perfect.
You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Gale Animation, and in my bio, there's a link to my portfolio and website as well.
I'm at Kakaka and all social media. So Twitter, Instagram, that's KACAWCAW. You can also go to my website. It's just catherinechow.com.
And then you can follow at Reimagining Tomorrow on Instagram to get up to date about the film, and also links to our respective handles are on that IG. So at Reimagining Tomorrow.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's shellher89. And then if you want to follow more on Duke, you can go to Duke Film on Instagram, or you can go on the website dukefilm.com.
Great. I mean, thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate it. And just look forward to staying in touch with you guys. I mean, this is live now on YouTube. It's also being recorded as well. So I'll make sure to go back because I'd love to stay in touch with you guys as well. And thank you again for letting me help moderate this amazing panel discussion with women from all around the world, creating films that definitely need to be seen over and over and over. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chantal.
Thank you.